All right, on to InDesign. What is InDesign? So Illustrator was kind of what it says it is. It's an illustration tool. Photoshop is rasterize. InDesign is a desktop publishing software application for creating flyers, brochures, magazines, newspapers, books, and etc. Projects created using InDesign can be shared on both digital and print format. So who uses InDesign? A graphic designer to an artist, a publisher, and anyone that's in marketing. It's a great way of communicating. Is one of the most used software in a graphic designer's life because it is so versatile to single print runs to large complicated pages like in a book or a catalog or a magazine. We've done a little bit of adding type and image, but this is where we really kind of hone in on combining them both to express an idea. And the first one we're going to talk about, postcards. We're going to make some fun summertime in New Jersey postcards. All right, so we're back here and we're starting to get into InDesign at this time. You should have InDesign. This is a more doing with me step-by-step process. So what I ask you to do first is please make a folder. And then here are my two InDesign files. And then have another folder that either says links or images. And this is what I mean by link. Typically, once I start making this, it will automatically link to this folder. And I'll show you that if I move this folder out of the location that it thinks it should be, you'll start seeing that there is errors. It'll start alerting you that it's missing images. The images need to be close to the actual file. If they're not linked together within the same folder, when you move this whole folder or move any of these parts, it will disconnect the link because it will no longer know where it's connecting. So you have to keep all your elements in the same place so that the program can find it again. So that's a little bit of how I can try to explain linking files. We're going to create the postcard so we can get right into postcards once we're ready to start making the three different variations. So we have 3 pages. We know we're doing 3. We're not going to do facing pages. These are just single cards, so I just don't want them to be facing. I want them in a row. So 3. And then columns, I'm going to add 3. Margins, I'm just going to change these to 25. So 0.25. And you should have the links connected. And if they are, if I click on the next one, it'll just automatically load that up. And I want to do exactly the same thing I did with margins with bleeds. So 0.25. All right, we don't have to worry about slugs. Preview is looking good. I've got 3 columns. I've got the frame of the original size, which is 7.5. That's that darker line here. Margin is the second pinkish line, which is a quarter in. And then the red is a quarter out, which is the bleed. So from this dark black line to the red line, that's that extra bonus color. So when these get cut down, you don't ever get a chance to see any white. We want to make sure that this is printed, it'll be full color. The bleed allows for any possible accident in cutting that there will always be color. So this is looking kind of similar, right? So we have our tools on one side, our workspace on the other, and this right here between this top bar is the control. And you can find that under window where it's clicked control. So that's essential. Please make sure you have that clicked. And you can immediately see how these tools of the control work. So as soon as I move my arrow, it shows me what location I am on the page. This will relate to when I make a shape, also directing, changing direction, scaling, shifting. It can be all done here, rotating, flipping. It's really nice to have this option, percentage and scale, all available at your fingertips on the top. This is your fill. So I have my drop box for my fill and my stroke line. And this will be some other type wraparound information. And that's about what I have. But it does change depending on what tool you are selecting. So this one you're really familiar with, the selection tool, direct selection tool, you can move parts. This is the page tool. It allows you to change the page. So a good way of showing this is if you go to pages, see how they're all in your row? There's my 3 pages available. I can actually select a page and I can change the orientation if I want it. So this allows me to choose one of them and change the direction. I can even change the scale if I want. So this is very different from Illustrator and Photoshop. So see how I can actually change the layout? That's under Page Tool. I can affect just one. I'm going to undo that and go back to our original. I want to make sure that our size and scale is the same. So we have the Type tool that you should be familiar with. It's the same format. Create a type box and then start typing. It's more like Illustrator. Photoshop just made a box already every time you ended up typing. You still have this, you have to drag and create a box and then you can type. It does have 2 options. If you hit the little arrow on the side, you have typing on path. Look at how there are letters and numbers next to these tools. These are quick key commands. So if you're going to use type tool a lot, you might want to remember that the type tool is T, the direct tool is A, and the selection tool is V. Those are pretty much the same throughout all the software. This is the pen tool. It's still here. So if you liked it, you can still use it. And if you select the arrow just right, you can see that they're all available. So there's different types of pencil, and then there's a smoothing tool within the pencil, and then there's a erase tool. So there's 2 different shape tools. The difference between one, this has an X in it, where this shape, as you can even see just by the tools icon, it doesn't. Both of them can load type, so you can change it into a type by just clicking on it, and you can start typing. It will change into a type. Both of them can be changed into different colors, and I can add an outline. So you say, then why have 2? See that X mark? That could indicate to someone else who's working on this file with me that a real image is coming. So if I was going to lay this out and I had an image here and an image located here, and let's say even have type, and in type there's still placeholder text, not the type or the image yet. So this needs to go out every week, and they don't have the photographer or the writer isn't done. So they could do this, have their header set up, have everything set up and ready to go. So once the copy and the information comes in, they can place where it needs to go and get it out the door. Scissors, you've probably seen before. Transform is great. It works a lot like the Photoshop transform. So you type out the image, and you can, if you're using the transform, you can actually move the image and the size larger or smaller. Where if you just had it on the type tool and not clicked on the tool, it would only affect the box. So I'd be able to turn the box and rotate the box, but the scale and the size would not be affected until I selected the tool. And then hitting Shift, I can even keep it to scale. So anything I want to change in size and scale without distorting, I need to make sure I have the Transform tool, which is instead of T in Photoshop is E. So try to keep that. Remember that. It's really important because also, not only can you not resize type, but you can't resize images. I can move this out, and you'll see the image in here. But the image isn't actually, it's just being masked. It's just inside. So see this circle here? I can move the image with the hand if I have the image. You can't see the image because the image is so large. So you can see a glimpse of it now. That's what I mean it's being masked. So if I have it clicked, I can shift And always shift to keep the image scale correct. And for some reason it changes. These aren't to scale. You want to keep the percentage of the image exactly the same. Alright, so I've moved the image from the inside. It's still being masked. And all I want to do at this point is, this is the way I want it to look. I want it masked off that much. But now I just want to make it larger. And I can't unless I select the transform tool. Then hitting shift, I can transform the image in its masked box any way I want. Then we have the eyedroppers. We'll talk more about that. The hand, which allows you to move the image around, and then the magnifying glass, the good old magnifying glass. Alright, so those are pretty much the tools. You should know the fills, and that the arrow can go flip it from back to forth. This will do type, so if we had type and we wanted to fill, we can do outline and fill. So over here, let's start chipping away at this side. We have, first off, the character, which you should be familiar with. There's swatches, which you should be familiar with Illustrator and Photoshop. Paragraphs we'll get into more, but here's more information that's also located here. Layers, you are very familiar with Illustrator. One as type, so all my type is on one layer. And then I would add another one for image. Links, it will link the images to a folder that you have it in. And it's very important to know where that folder is. Strokes you should be familiar with. We would also have strokes up here if this somehow changed. There's our strokes. Color, would you character styles, paragraph styles we'll go over. Effects, you've seen these in Photoshop, transparency. All of these should be familiar with you. Aligning is something that I use a lot. It aligns, so if you have multiple boxes and you want them all to be aligned up, you can select it and align it. And it will lock directly to the height of the one to line them all up on one. It's a very handy tool. The nice thing about InDesign is that if I was making a grid system of a whole bunch of squares, I can make boxes very quickly just using the arrow. And like I said, I'll get into more detail. But the gap allows me to shift these sections to be even more custom. So hence, this is why it's for layout. Let's get into the meat of this in the next lesson. Take a break, get up and walk around. Thanks for listening in. All right, we're back. So refresher, this is what we're making. That's number 1, 2, and 3. All right, so let's get into what we really need to talk about, and that is adding images. The thing I want to do is grab the rectangle that has the X in it, because that's going to remind me that this is the layer with my image in it. And I'm going to go up into File, and then go to Place. Select it, and this dialog box comes up. Now I can see images. Now, you can't really see the image, and I'm looking for the one with the feet. If I hit spacebar, the image will come larger so I can scroll through them to see each image. So I know that's the right one. I want to make sure this is replaced, even though it's not really. I'm not replacing anything. There's no image already there. But it's good to always have that clicked and then hit open. So see how it's placed into the image. So we definitely don't have all the features. So I'll expand it. I'm going to select my tool to allow me to move the image around. So see how much we're missing? I really need to get it a lot smaller. So let's grab this corner and hit Shift. So the image is set. Alright, so that's done. The next is we're going to put in type. Summertime fun in New Jersey. So before we go further, the one thing I want you to do is just hit W for it. Make sure you're not on the type. Make sure you're on the selection tool, and then hit W. This is what the image looks like. This is the way it'll be cut out. When you hit W again, this is our working layout. So it shows our columns, it shows our bleeds, and next thing I'm going to do is change the font. I want to make sure that I have that cleared in that I wanted. It has this red dot, this red square with an X in it because the image is larger than the text. If it's too small, it'll disappear. You need to drag it out large enough, but then you can double click at any of these corner points or X points to get all the image into the square. If I want to resize this, remember what I told you, you have to go to E for transform. And I want to make it a lot smaller. I also want to change the style to a text. I still have it selected. I want this to kind of be in the center. So to do that, I need to move it upward. And I can do that under this tool here. And the leading is on auto, which is fine. I kind of think that they all should be changed just the color. So when I did this, I had this more centered. So I would look at your grid and put it towards the center. Or you can use, see how there's center points within this image? You can use that by pulling the guide over and lining it to the center. If you're using this rule, the guide, and you can't seem to get it to work, it's because you don't have ruler on. Ruler is Command R. Alright, so we're getting close. We could select them and use layers, and we could lock it. We could change this to text and image. So this is why this part is nice to have, and then maybe this is our frame. So we're going to add some border and that little circle. So if we don't want to accidentally move or make any mistakes, then we keep this locked. And we know that everything that we add is going to be on top of this, so we can keep it below the next layer. Let's get into the circle. I go as close as I can. I have to do Shift Option, and I'll drag from the center. Once I do that, I'm going to have to visually center that. Change this to the blue color. Let's beef this up a little to 2, I think. And voila. We got the little circle. Now we need to do 2 more framing for this image. I want blue dots around the outer edge. On the margin, I want 2 yellow lines. So this is pretty easy. I'm going to take my one that's not for frames. This is just a shape. I'm going to be right on where it would be trimmed. I want it blue, but I'm going to change it using some of the characters I have already available for line stroke. So I can do dot or Japanese. And I had this at like 6. So there's a nice dot. The next one, I want you to grab another rectangle and select the margin. And we're going to change this to yellow. Alright, now I have another option here. I'm going to do these 2 thick bars for our dots. If you want to bring it in a little and adjust it to make the dots fit into the page, go ahead. But this is what you should kind of have. Alright, please go take a break, and we're going to work on the next one. Alright, I hope you took a little break here. We're going to do this one next. Dividing this in half. So if I use the X tool, right, my shape tool, rectangle, and bring it all the way to the red marks, I can bring it over and center it right to the center. So that's my center, and I'm going to put 2 images in here. So I have 2 rectangles that go all the way to the bleed. We're going to add 2 different images. Let's look back at my original. There's the original. We have this vista that we want to line up. So we want to do that. So let's see if we can get that to line up correctly. Bring that back. Remember, we're going to have to select these images. So I would use Option, magnifying glass to get it further out. hand to get it into the center of the page. And then I go back to the direct tool. The circle comes up. And if I hold it down, I can see where that image is. And from that example I had, we're more like here. We've got to reduce this by a lot. So instead of just kind of dragging it, we could just reduce this to, let's say, 50, just to start. And because these are linked, again, they'll link together. All right, we're getting closer. It did select the whole frame. That's okay. We know where our center part is. We brought it back out. So I can make sure I'm still in the direct tool. The arrow's there. Bring it back to the center. That's not bad. I almost like it better. We made that 50 and we lined it up. Let's see what this one looks like. Okay, good. So that's done. The next is to add these lines. So we have 3 lines on top and 3 lines on bottom. So I will take my shape tool. Just going to line it up on the margin. 7.25. Actually 7.5. We're doing yellow. And we want to flip it so that it is not an outline, but a fill. And then we have our first one. And the next thing I would do is Option. See how I'm getting my double arrows there? And then drag, and then Option, drag again. And then go and just double check that they look equal. And since you've got those done, you can select both, but unselect the image behind it so that you're not dragging a copy of the image. And then do Option. See the 2 arrows again? And I can bring my lines back on the other margin on the bottom. Okay, one more step we have to do for this video, which is add the square base with the type. I'm going to go to my rectangle because it's just going to be a filled color. And I'm going to start from this column all the way to the other column. I'm going to change it to the color that I need. I started with the stroke because I want to make sure that blue wasn't there. And then I want to use the arrow to redirect it to the fill. We need to get these into curved corners. So if you go under Object, you can see that you have corner options. So let's select that. And all we're going to do is let's keep the standard, but let's change it to this round. I hit OK. We're almost done with this. Let's get this a little more centered. And then all we need to do is add the copy, which we could grab from here. So this is behind. Remember that we put it on the layer, and we now need to bring this into front. Because sometimes if there's something below or above, either you don't see it or it might be hard to get to what you want. So I want to change this to all at 18. A little funky. I'm going to change that maybe 11. And I want this whole line closer to the summertime. So again, summertime is 18 by 21.6. That's that auto. But then we change the bottom, which is the in is 10. And New Jersey is 1818. It's a little bit tighter to the summertime. This whole line is 18. See how it disappears when we look at the size of it, because the size is different. All right, and let's make sure we keep our text boxes cleaner. So let's grab it and make it really tight to the image. And that should be what you did. All right, take another pause, a little break. We're on our last card. All right, this is the last one. Postcard that we're doing is going to look like something like this. It's going to be 4 images and then the copy on the bottom. Simple. Just placing the images, adding some color in the background. Again, just another practice on image. So another way of actually loading your squares is you can go to rectangle frame tools. And if I drag it out, I'm still holding on to it. Make sure you drag it all the way to the other end, other corner. Don't unclick. If you unclick, you have to start again. Go to your arrows on your keyboard. Hit the one towards the right while you're still holding on to that shape, right? I still have it. I'm not unclicked. I hit the arrow once, and I hit an arrow again upwards, right and up. Then I let go. So it'll make me a perfect squares within my shape. Next thing I do is I'm going to select the going from the top all the way down and around. Select the first square and then go to File, Place. I'm not going to adjust the images. I'm just going to place them first. Remember to check your links, all of your links for all of your images. None of them should have warning. Alright, so we've got our 3 images. We've got them on the bleed. This is all looking good. We're going to add another color behind it. And you can add any color you would want. I'm just going to go to corner again. And you notice I'm not picking the one that has the square because I'm just going to use it as a shape form. I'm going to come back up here because the color popped up as a stroke. And I'm just going to change it to yellow and then flip it so that it is a fill instead of a stroke. I do that to make sure that I don't forget that the stroke's there and that there's a color that I don't file. The next important thing is I need to make this go behind. I go to Object, Range, Send Back. Alright, so the image is behind. We need to get some copy in here, so we could select the copy above. And I would just do Command C, copy, and then Command V, paste. And just move it. We're going to keep it sitting right on the margin. And we're going to make this one a little more simplified. I'm just going to change this all to yellow. I want them all the same size. And then see how I have that end there too high? We liked it, but now I'm going to take it out and add a 0 here so that it lines up exactly with the rest. Perfect. The type's a little too large, so I'm going to select it and reduce the size again. And this is done. I'm going to show you one more. I'm going to show you how to make type follow a path. So I want to change that type to type on path, and I'm going to use a shape, big circle in the middle. You can do Option, Shift, make it more centered, and then we're going to use the type tool, and we're going to select it. Make sure we're doing the right path. It wasn't selecting on the path that I wanted. It was selecting on the image path. And I'm going to do 2009. I'm going to select it, and I'm going to increase the size by a lot. I'm going to change it to the typeface that I've been working with, and I'm going to make it black. So once you do that, you can adjust where it is. You can rotate it. You gotta be careful. As you can see, I'm kind of keep hitting the wrong square. And we could change this to white or yellow. All right, I'm going to talk a little bit about saving for InDesign. And again, we're going to continue to use the format of PDF. PDF will condense your file, hence easier to load for viewing. It condenses your file and allows it to put it on Canvas, to send an email. It's also a compact file to provide your clients for a first look. It also is great for sending final prints to the printer. There's some extra steps you have to do when you do send this stuff to printer, but it's the same use. InDesign is a little bit different in this way of saving because InDesign is a production for multi-pages applications for books and even digital websites. So sometimes there's a process in PDFs that need to be very particular for what you're making. A magazine might need different presets than a book would need. Because of this, and because this is used for major production, this program has created a different location for making PDFs with these specialized presets. So there's two ways to do PDFs. Look at the Adobe PDF presets, which is what I was talking about. See, there's many ways that people would like to set your presets to create different types of PDFs. Sometimes these are going to be really high, and so the high quality ones can create a very large file. Sometimes you need just a small one so that you can transport files. I always prefer the press quality. I use Define to save and create new presets for myself. So I could create new, I set up the file correctly, and then I save. If you want to save in other settings, export will always work also. So remember that you can just go to File, Export, which is just below it, and it will have everything they're used to seeing. It will have your JPEGs, it will have your EPSs, it will have a PDF for print and a PDF for interactive. So even here, they made it one more step in PDFs. Make sure you're saving it into the folder that you have indicated as your InDesign folder. And this is going to be a little bit different. You're still going to have pages, but you're going to have pages and spreads. Let that sit at the default of pages for now. We'll talk about spreads once we start getting into bookmaking. This is where all the magic happens in compression. So it's just a good recap again about the importance of PDFs. I usually keep all my options off, and the only thing I like to have is view PDFs after exporting. Everything else I keep off. Anything that you have clicked just causes the file to be just a little bit larger. So streamlining and making sure that the compression is low and that the general is only thing that's clicked is just opening up the file after exporting is all we need. So then I export and you can see my files. So I hope that was enough information.